at the end. I have a couple friends who play professional sports. I'm just lucky and privileged enough to know some pretty cool people. But I've got a couple buddies that play in the NFL. It's actually crazy. 5 guys went to the NFL from my graduating class. I mean, most high schools don't even have 5 guys ever. Tustin High, class of 2001, alone had 5 guys get drafted in the NFL. Out of control, which explains why I was not remotely popular in high school when that's what I was competing against. So I knew some guys who went to the NFL. I've known some guys that have played minor league baseball, worked their way up to professional baseball at the major league level. No hockey players that I know of yet, but that would be awesome. And basketball, not much of a basketball guy. Here's one thing that's been very fascinating that I've learned from them that I think teaches us a lot about the Christian life. From all of them, I've asked all of them in different ways, like, how do you do it? How do you navigate your way through being a professional athlete? How do you remain successful and stay humble? And how do you not let the money get to you and the women get to you? How do you even, I don't even know what that looks like to go from a normal dude from Tustin to on a roster of a professional team that only hundreds of people on planet Earth can do. And I hear the same thing from all of them, regardless of the sport. I hear the same thing from all of them. They say, honestly, Brent, there's 2 components to it. There's 2 components to being very successful at the professional athletic level. There's 2 components. The first component is this. You absolutely have to get to a point where you believe you belong there. You have to get to the point where you believe you belong there. There is some level of contentment you have with that you are at the bigs. You have arrived. If you don't operate under the assumption that all is well and that you're supposed to be there and that you belong on the team, if you don't get there mentally, you're hosed. You are hosed. Because you'll always be worried about the guy behind you. You'll always be worried about the person. I mean, the best athletes are the ones that know they belong. There is some level of contentment with the fact that they have arrived. Here's the second component. You have to stay hungry. Because the minute you become complacent, the minute you take for granted the fact that you are there, the minute you assume that it will always and forever be your life, the minute that happens, you are also toast. You're done. You're done. Because guess what? There is a long line of people behind you. There are a ton of people that are ready to take your spot, and so you've got to stay hungry. And this analogy probably breaks down at some point, but I think it fits perfectly with how we're going to end the series in 1 Timothy. We've been looking at the blueprints for what it looks like to be the house of God. What does it look like to be a Christian family of God? And this letter, it's called 1 Timothy, but it's one of 2 letters to Timothy. Not written by Timothy, written to a man named Timothy, by a guy named Paul. And Paul says, Timothy, you have your hands full in Ephesus. It's this crazy city. You have your hands full pastoring a church in this city. Let me give you the shortest, 3,000-word version that I can of how to pastor that church well so that it looks the way a house of God should look. So that it looks and operates the way a family should work. And what I love about this book is this. Paul's direction on the ideal church, the prototypical church, it does not have to do with a lot of liturgy. It does not have to do with a lot of religion. It doesn't have to do with the sacraments. And those things are important. Communion, baptism, those things are important. But the ideal church is not centered around that. And the ideal church isn't even centered around business decisions and marketing and all of these things that we make church to be. Paul, he even tells Timothy that the church is about good doctrine, but even good theology is not enough for the ideal family of God. Even good theology is not enough. What I love about this letter, what I love about this book, is that through and through and through and through, Paul says the ideal church is the one that best represents God in such a way that the gospel is furthered. All throughout this letter, time and time again, Paul says, make sure you're respected by the world. Make sure the world looks kindly upon you. Make sure the world is impressed with who you are. Make sure you handle your business and you're organized in such a way that the world takes notice. Make sure that your relationships are actually characterized by something that the world would admire. I mean, the entire focus of Paul's letter to 1 Timothy is, look, an orderly, godly house. Family of God that really closely represents what God intended is a place that the world will find attractive. And in doing that, the gospel will explode. In being that type of family, the gospel will explode. Because people will see the way that you organize yourselves. People will see the way you treat one another. People will see the way you use your money. People will see the way you treat women and the way women act. People will see the way men act. People will see the way leaders act. People will see the types of leaders you rely upon. They will see that and they will go, dang, those people have something going well for them. And it's kind of like when you walk into a restaurant or a place of business and you're impressed immediately, and you think, they know what they're doing here. Like In-N-Out, forget their food. In-N-Out has kind of figured it out, right? Like there's a reason they've got 3 different templates that every single restaurant fits in. Have you noticed that? You go to an In-N-Out in the middle of, well, they're not in the middle of nowhere, but if you go to some random In-N-Out 300 miles from here, have you ever noticed it's laid out exactly like the one at Tustin Marketplace? Have you ever noticed that? Like, have you ever noticed that everything is super spick and span white? Have you ever noticed that the positioning of the beverage station and the cleanliness of the bag? Have you ever noticed? I mean, they've got it figured out. And Paul says it's the same with the church. The more you guys figure it out, and the more you have your things together, the outside world will look at that and say, there's something different about this. This belief system they have is not just academic. It's not just intellectual. It's not just myth. It's not just legend. They're different. We see it. It makes people take notice. And so this very last section of this letter is all about the things that I opened with in that story about my athlete friends. Being content, but staying hungry. Being content, but staying hungry. Being content, but staying hungry. Paul says, look, if you want to operate as a family of God that the world will notice as different, as inspired by the Spirit himself and empowered by the Spirit, you will be people that are marked by constant contentment, but hunger. Hunger, hunger, hunger. So let's start with the first one. When he talks about what true contentment is. If you have your Bibles, turn to 1 Timothy chapter 6. Paul has addressed a lot of problems that Timothy's got to deal with. And one of the last ones that he deals with here in chapter 6 has to do with people that are a part of that family for worldly gain. They are a part of that church family for their own greed and their own monetary gain. And some of them are even teaching. We read this starting in verse 3. Teach and urge these things. If anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ and the teaching that accords with godliness, then he is puffed up with conceit and understands nothing. Further, he has an unhealthy craving for controversy and for quarrels about words, which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil suspicions, and constant friction among people. And they are depraved in mind and depraved of truth and imagine that godliness is a mean of gain. Now there is great gain in godliness with contentment. For we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Let's stop there. Paul is dealing with Timothy, and Timothy's got a world of problems at this church. And one of the problems we talked about several weeks ago was unruly women. One of the problems was bad leadership. One of the problems that Matt talked about in the very first week on October 18th was bad teaching. Here's yet another problem where it's becoming evident that there are people in this church that are motivated by greed. They are motivated by the monetary gain. They are willing to teach that which is untrue so that they might gain worldly wealth. what that causes are things like friction and divisiveness and quarrels and people that just fight constantly. I remember one time I sat in on a theology class. I had not decided to go to Talbot. I love Talbot. It's a great place. But this was not so great of a observation I made one time. I went and I sat in on a class before I had chosen to go there for my seminary degree, Master's of Divinity degree. I sat in on this class. I got to be honest with you. I walked out of there after about an hour, and I thought, these guys, and of course it was 95% men, which was a little problematic for me. It's like, these guys, all they like to do is argue. It's like, I feel like I don't know if I had this romantic thought in my mind that it would be just full of guys that are praying for one another and washing each other's feet, right? And like anointing other with oil and perfume. I guess that would be weird. But I don't know what I had pictured. And I walked in, and instead of that incredible picture, it was an hour of just debate about the most useless stuff. And I thought, if this is it, I'm not interested. Like, if this is it, I don't want a seminary degree if this is it. Now, that's not reflective of my entire experience there, but it does prove a point, because I ended up going there for 4 more years. But it does prove a point. There are those of us who like being right more than we like being transformed. We all at times often like being right more than we like being transformed people. And Paul says, look, if you're motivated for any reason other than to be a transformed person, you're missing it. If you're motivated by anything other than being a transformed person, like, this is what I want is transformation. I don't want to be right. I don't want to make a dime off of this. I want to be a transformed person, and I want to do that with others. If anything but that motivates you, you are in for envy. You are in for strife. You are in for constant friction. You are in for quarrels with people because your motivation to walk with God has been muddled. You're in for those things because your motivation has been muddled. And Paul specifically drills down on money. And look, I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox here, but we are in a culture where people are still absolutely profiting using religion at the expense of people that just need Jesus. And it enrages me. It absolutely enrages me. And John Oliver, if you're not familiar with who John Oliver is, John Oliver has a weekly show. I actually don't even know what it's called. What is it? There it is. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Very good. A weekly show. And he did a piece about a month ago on televangelists. Christian evangelicals who are making money hand over fist at the expense of poor people. And I don't just mean poor financial people. I mean poor in spirit, poor in heart. People that are donating money and ask for more. Donating money, ask for more. Promise that a seed results in a harvest. And it's just, I'm not saying a generalization that this applies to everybody, but there are people, there are men and women out there who are using religion. They're making money in the name of God. It's outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. And Paul sees this in Ephesus and tells Timothy, these people have no place in your family. Because that's not what motivates the gospel. It is not motivated by money, because the love of money will result in all kinds of evil. And he goes out of his way to say it's not a problem being rich. The problem is wanting to be rich. Because if you want anything other than a changed heart by God, you're missing it. You're missing it. And he says what you should be rich in is contentment. You want to be rich in contentment. And it's perfect that Thanksgiving is 5 days away or 4 days away, because this is a season where we have to remind ourselves of all that we have. And I will just be honest with you. I am not one given to greed, so I thought. But then I did some self-evaluation this week, and I actually do think I am quite a greedy person. And I'll tell you how. In some things, I am not greedy at all. I will never, under any circumstances, spend more than $39.99 on a pair of jeans. That's ridiculous to me. Name brand 7s for like $240. Get out of here. That's 9 pairs of jeans, right? I don't need it. I buy my shoes at Payless. If we won the lotto, I'd still eat at Chick-fil-A twice a week. I'd probably go to Ruth's Chris more often. But I would be a humble I drive a pickup that's 15 years old. I want it to last me 25 years. I've told Patty, I want to be that guy that has a beater truck. I want it to be beat up and just drive it into the ground. I want that. I'm not greedy at all. I'm super content. I'm super content with my life. And then I started digging a little bit more. And I thought, when I go on a trip and someone asks me how my trip was, I always say something bad. It was a great trip. It was an awesome trip. They ran out of chips on the flight there, but it was a great trip. If I go to a restaurant, how was that restaurant? I always have one thing. It was good. The food was great. It was clean. The service was, I have higher expectations than that, right? How was your day? My day was good. Had a great day. Met with some people. This one person's kind of difficult. It just took a lot of energy out. I started thinking about, are there ever times where I am 100% content with my day and my circumstances? How was the game? It was good. It was kind of crowded. How was Disneyland? It was good, kind of crowded. I know. How was it? A little bit more expensive than I thought. I mean, do we ever just have complete unbridled contentment in life? And so you may not think that you're greedy. You may not think you have a love of money, but do you battle like I do, this sense of unbridled contentment with life? Or do you feel that more is owed to you? Do you feel that more is owed to you? And this is central to the very first sin in the Garden of Eden, right? One tree that they can't eat from. That's not enough. We need to eat from that one. And then when Satan asks Adam and Eve, they somehow forgot that they could eat from every other single tree, and they tell the serpent, we're not allowed to eat from any tree. And it's like, wait, what? How did the one tree become the entire focus of we can't eat from any tree? I mean, foundational to the human experience is wanting more. It's never enough. We want more. The meal was not fast enough or cheap enough or good enough. The flight was not smooth enough. The game was not entertaining enough. The movie was not long enough. My day was not easy enough. My paycheck is not big enough. My truck does not go fast enough. My tires are not big enough. That girl is not cute enough. My makeup doesn't look as good as it could. My wedding wasn't perfect. The list goes on and on. There is always something that we want more of, you greedy sons of guns. You are just like me. And not to make it all about money, because some of you are like me, and you go, I shop at H&M and Target too. I'm good with In-N-Out. I'm not one of those high maintenance people. Oh, but you are. We all are. And Paul says, you want to be a family that's well represented, that the rest of the world looks at and says, there's something here. They're different. He says, be different in the way you are content. Be people that are constantly content. Every tree in the garden minus one is more than good enough for you. That car, that house, those clothes, that job, it's good enough. God has you there. It's enough. And he says in multiple places, Jesus even says in Matthew, he's like, dude, food, clothes, you're good. Food, clothes, you're good. Don't even worry about that, he says, because the sparrow doesn't even know what the sparrow's going to eat. And sparrows are still alive all around us. The sparrows are living and flourishing on and on because God cares about the sparrow, and so he cares for you. My invitation to us as a church, as you walk out these doors, as you interact with people in your life, as you go to your job, as you interact with family, as you go around the table on Thanksgiving and you say what you're grateful for, my encouragement to you is that you do away with the 5% that's not good enough and focus on your 95. What is the 5% that you say, I just wish this? There has to be some level of contentment because that fights comparison and it fights greed. Contentment is comparison's antidote. If you are in bondage because you're always comparing yourself to someone else or what you could have or where you used to be or where you could be, any comparison is fought with contentment. You are where you are, and God is good, and the world will take notice. Here's the second thing. We must, though, stay hungry. Contentment does not equate to complacency. Contentment does not equate to complacency. So you don't sit around and say, well, my pastor told me to be content, so this terrible job, whatever, it's my thing. Well, my car broken. Well, I'm supposed to be content. Well, no one's asking me out, so I guess I'll just be lonely the rest of my life. Well, like that movie was terrible, but I'll pay $10 to see it again because I'm supposed to be content. Like, no, that's stupid. That's dumb. Contentment does not equate to complacency. And that's where my athletic friends have it right. They have to have this understanding that I'm here, I've arrived, I've got to hold on to that. This is enough. I'm here. The gospel is enough for you. You have it. That's enough. And yet we stay hungry. We stay passionate. We pursue. And this is the weird paradox, right? Because in one sentence, Paul says to be content always. And then in the next sentence, he says pursue, chase, strive for. And so we read about Paul's instructions to stay hungry, starting in verse 11. He compares Timothy then with all of these people that are motivated by awful things, who are not content. He says in verse 11, as for you, O man of God, flee these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. Fight the good fight of faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called and about which you made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. Skip, if you would, down to verse 17. As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty or proud, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who provides us with everything. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. He says, look, Timothy, I just told you to be content, but that does not mean be complacent. Stay hungry. Steve Jobs would say stay foolish, right? Never stop going. But you're not pursuing wealth. You're not pursuing renown. You're not pursuing fame. You're not pursuing that guy. You're not pursuing that fix. You're not coping. You're not pursuing those things. You are pursuing things that will mark you as different to the world. You're fighting that fight. And I want you to understand that term fighting, it's not a war term. We don't grab like our, what are the knives? That's it, bayonet. I was like battalions. That's something else. And then you're not supposed to like grab your bayonet and walk out. I'm like, I'm supposed to fight the good fight. Anyone who comes near me, I'm fighting. No, it's an athletic term. And Matt talked about this a couple weeks ago when he enlightened us with his table tennis and endeavors, which were very apt. It's like this is what we're called to. Just as an athlete tries to be incredibly perfect, spending all kinds of time and energy with this goal in mind, Paul says, look, you've got a goal in mind. Keep your eyes on Jesus. That is your goal, and pursue that like an athlete would pursue their venture. Now, I will be a little bit vulnerable with you. This is going to be really vulnerable. This is really, really vulnerable. Are you ready for this? Protect this and don't put this on social media or anything. This is me being very vulnerable. About a year ago, I was in the best shape of my life. It was the best shape of my life. I had recently done this program called P90X. P90X is a 90-day program. It's very intense, and coupled with that program is a very strict diet. I mean, I was eating chicken and spinach until I was blue in the face, green in the face, actually. I mean, that's all I was doing. Leaves, protein. Veggies, protein. Fruit, a little bit of fruit, because even fruit's bad. Veggies. And I did this, and I was miserable and angry and a wretch. And Dr. Pepper was something that my lips tasted once a week. And I was just like, oh, Dr. Pepper, you are the nectar of the gods, and yet I can't enjoy you right now. 90 days. Here's where things get vulnerable. In the last 12 months, and I blame my son, and I blame this church, because I'm certainly not to blame. Just kidding. Yeah. In the last, and again, just don't ooh and ah, just keep this to yourself because I'm being vulnerable, and I hide it well. But in the last year, I've gained almost 30 pounds in 1 year. True story. Now, if you extrapolate that over 10 years, I'm gone. I'm dead. You cannot gain 30 pounds a year. 10 years in a row. And you're looking at me thinking, yeah, but Brent, you look so healthy. Thank you. Oh, well, you play basketball every week and you run up and down the floor with these young guys. That's debatable. I don't know how well I'm doing that. So in the last week, I just thought, I'm going for this again. I know the shape that I can be in because I've been there. And I'm accustomed to being there. And it feels good to be there. Not because I look like I belong on Men's Fitness, because I don't, but because I feel better. And I can actually run up and down the basketball court, and I want that. And my mind is not on today, because today I quit. Today I don't do that hour yoga thing. Today I stop and I eat a bunch of grilled cheese and I drink Dr. Pepper until I pass out. That's if I keep my eyes on today. If I keep my eyes on 3 months from now, I'm good. 3 months from now, I know the results. And you won't know any different because I'll probably look the same, but I will know the difference. I will feel the difference, and my eyes are 3 months out. Now, I don't know if you can relate to gaining 30 pounds in a year. I know, gosh, now I'm saying it out loud. This is going to be online, too. I might, delete this part. But now that I have an understanding of what it means to pursue, to chase, to stay hungry, not literally, that's bad, eat, but to stay hungry for something. And this is what Paul's talking about. He's like, look, you guys in Ephesus, you understand athleticism. You understand what it means to compete. You understand being at the top of your game. He says, be at the top of your Christian game. Not because you need it for heaven, not because you're reliant upon it, but because you relish in it. You relish that obedience. You don't rely upon it, you relish that obedience. And it's just like bowling. I love going bowling because even if no one else is around, I can still compete with myself. And it can be fun, but I want to be the best. And Pat and I have gotten so many fights over the years about, Brent, you're too competitive. I'm like, you're not competitive enough. You're too complacent. Like when we throw a Frisbee, like run for the Frisbee. Don't just let it go. Like we got to sweat a little bit. She's like, no, I'm good. Like I'm good. I got my heels on, right? Like I'm good. I'm like, no. And so that's why I love bowling, because I don't have to be competitive with anybody else. They can all do awful. I don't even care about beating them. I want to do well. And that's the message of 1 Timothy 6. You'll be known by the excellence with which you live the Christian life. And that doesn't come down to prayer and reading the Bible and giving a ton, although those things are important. It's pursuing love and godliness and unity and peace. That's what people will see. And so, yes, be absolutely content, but you must passionately pursue and stay hungry for the things that are characteristic of the family of God alone. Does that make sense? We have to hold these things in tension. We have to be people that are 100% content with where we are and who God has made us and what He's given us, whilst also staying hungry and being excellent. P90X, man. P90X. And the minute this one's done, new goal, right? You run a 5K, you want to run a 10K. You run a 10K, you want to run a half marathon. Anyone who does their first half marathon says, this is insane. I might have it in me to do a full marathon. And then you run a full marathon, you think, this is insane. I could do 5 of these a year. And then you do that, and then you think, I could do 5 of these in a row. And then you get really crazy, and you're ultra marathoners that run 30 marathons in 30 days. And guess what? If you had your eyes on that prize, you could do it. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to keep you could. But I'm asking you to keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus. And I pray that our church is marked, we're characterized by that hunger, that passion, and yet completely content. Completely content. Does this speak to you? Can you apply my stupid P90X story to, or all you're going to remember is how fat I am? Is that the only thing you're going to remember from this? Just, Brent, no more Dr. Pepper, bro. Just put it away. Here's some V8. We're going to pray. I hope that this, and then we're going to sing. I hope that this series has legitimately encouraged us as a family. I look at you guys and I think, this is my family. I miss a week and I feel like I've missed my family. If you're not here for a week, I feel like I've missed my family. And I want you to have that same appreciation. Amongst you here are your brothers and sisters. These are your brothers and sisters, and the more we do this, the more we follow these blueprints from 1 Timothy, that's a church that the world will be attracted to. That's a church that these heartbroken people down the street would want to come to. That's a church for the refugee. That's a church for the hungry. That's a church for the hurting. That's a church for the downtrodden and broken and sinful, wounded people. That's a church for those people. And that's our heart. I hope that you